So to set the stage for today's episode, this is going to be kind of a coffee conversation with the depth of way I want to go through some of the content today. But I also want to give a quick plug to every sponsor we have. The thing, my favorite is, if you're on YouTube, you get to see the packaging even. It's nightstand worthy. You can just sit there on your nightstand because it looks like massage oil or a candle.
It looks like a candle. Yeah, it's really cute.
It's so great. We love it. smr.fm/EVREE is how you can get 10% off. And we want everybody to know. But as we transition into the show, this is a long email. And I think it's worth going through the whole email because to help set the stage of what we're going to be talking about, because this is one of those here in short order. We've had emails come in with things and with topics that we've not necessarily headed down that path and explored even more in depth. And so here's another one that just came in from a wife that I'm just going to jump into the email, and then questions that come to your mind, we'll just kind of roll through this. All right, Pam?
Perfect.
So I've listened to a lot of podcasts and I read a lot of books, and I've never heard this issue addressed. So I knew if anyone would, and they would do it honestly, wisely, and frankly, it would be you guys. So thank you for that. We've been married 28 years, and we're on the beauty end of the ashes from a marriage crisis that hit us a few years ago. Part of that was rooted in my husband's his hypersexuality history, beginning when he was a child with porn and a sexual encounter with a girl his age, and intense struggle with lust that he kept hidden and also minimized or outright lied to me about along through our history. He rarely acted out, and then unbeknownst to me, won a struggle with porn early in our marriage, but the struggle with lust was unrelenting, intense, real, and fed so much shame. Through this excruciating but healing marriage event, my own painful history was exposed as well. I've also begun to truly understand and empathize with his and other men or women with a similar history. Although I do have struggles related to my history, I don't struggle with lust, so it's been difficult for me to even wrap my brain around it when temptation or lust takes hold and attaches to you and then becomes sin. I've heard the analogy as these are like as birds flying over your head and you let them pass, and that's what normal is. But what are the signs that it's no longer normal and that this has turned into a parasite of lust? I mean, for reference, my husband wasn't just having the occasional flocks of bird fly over. He had whole flocks, and sometimes he would feed them so that they would hover and stay. Over the years, my husband would mention it to friends or mentors, and he was always blown off with the, well, at least you're not into porn, or I'm struggling and doing so much worse things, or we all struggle with temptation and making sure he's not dabbling in the start of an affair, etc. This left him alone and isolated and steeped in shame. My husband has freedom now, has exposed his struggles in history, and we're both in counseling. But there are a few unanswered questions I have after walking this road and learning so much about sex, the brain, trauma, intimacy, and relationship. For people with a past with years filled with porn, multiple sexual partners, and more, even if you escape the porn and even if you escape the temptation of an affair, you always have those images in your head. And here's where she's kind of landing this. You can stop the porn, but if the image is there and handy and accessible, then what do you do with those? Why aren't people or experts or authors speaking to what they do to address things like porn and affairs, etc.? As a wife, what do you do with the living reality of the knowledge of everything that is planted, accessible, and intimate with your husband is in his head? Even if the lust diminishes to normal, whatever that is, it feels like there's a woman waiting in the wings to devour him, a woman that will never go away. All the help for wives is focused on getting wives through the reality of porn or affair or flirting or whatever, and holding boundaries with something as tangible as a husband acting out. But there's so much that can happen that isn't really involved in acting out. There are so much sexual images and experiences that have power prowling inside your husband, wanting to devour him and separate you, that feels so powerful and like it has robbed our intimacy and is waiting to rob it again, since those images never really go away. What's a wife to do with that knowledge? What's a wife to do to know when it's out of hand because there's no affair or any acting out that you can find? No one talks about that, not to mention talk about what does your intimacy and sexual relationship look like. Part of me thinks most wives don't even know that. I never did. Not to mention that new husbands and wives starting out need education about the mental and spiritual reality that so powerfully and can be unseen and can have an unseen vicious battle that sucks the life out of a marriage. I know community matters, and he's still looking for a man who will take his struggle seriously rather than minimizing it. So no one ever talks about this and these questions. Will you? And then in parentheses, she said, and if you do, don't do it without Pam.
All right.
So she's spot on.
Gauntlet thrown.
In a lot of ways. Yeah, there's a lot in this. And so we're going to take our time with this because there's a lot of things to unpack on her side, on his side, and on a relational side. And then we'll need to get into some of the weeds of biology and the brain and some, there's a whole arc we kind of need to follow.
Yeah.
With this.
Well, I guess could we just sit with what she's describing for a moment? Mm-hmm. Because it's true. These the memories sit there.
We've experienced this firsthand.
Yeah, the visualizations sit there. And what do you do with that? What is it she's really asking at the core of that?
Right. Well, so what she's asking is, how do you separate out the tangible behaviors that are struggle with somebody's history? Because this also still applies to the countless couples that are out there that have where one or both spouses have a prior partner.
Sure. It's not just about porn. Yeah,
absolutely. It's history. Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff is still in there. And so there is an element of what she's really asking is, how do I handle not knowing what's going on inside my spouse at any given moment, and even in our most intimate moments, because it can push a spouse to the brink of insecurity and exposure too.
Yeah. And these images that are there, is it more fear talking? Is this a biological thing that we can rewire our brain to try and get those things out? What do you do with that?
Yeah, there is work you can do with the brain science to help with this. Well, the way Dr. Schnarch would refer to these is situationally accessible memories. He categorized the brain into two categories. One is situationally accessible, and the other is verbally accessible. Verbally accessible is the one that we most commonly think of our memories. We recall them by thinking about them. By situationally accessible are deeper in our brain because the amygdala actually houses emotional memories. And it's not necessarily going to be the visual, it's going to be the emotion attached that becomes these flashbulb memories where something in my environment, something in my biology in that moment triggers it. It's not of my doing. It just happens. Every one of us has this. You're driving along and all of a sudden something hits you and you get a thought of something that's like, I haven't thought about it in forever.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not an intentional thing. It's what the brain does.
Yeah.
But to make sense of that, it requires the work of, you can rewire it by dealing with it better in the moment. And then where you steer it. That's ultimately where we're going to land with this episode, just as a tease of where we're heading. This is about, what do I do with those? Not the fact that they happen. Because every single human has these in some way, shape, or form. And based on sexual histories, some of them can be very, very, very steeped in the sexual realm because of whatever the experiences were, whatever the dabbling was, whatever the struggle was. And so the fact, first and foremost, the fact that they happen is just what ordinary memories do. It's the way our brains work. It categorizes things, it codes things. And the problem with the situationally accessible memories is it doesn't code them properly.
Why do you say that?
Because it doesn't put all the surrounding data around it. It gets caught in, like, these images had such a deeper meaning when they first were implanted. This also is applicable to trauma. Trauma works the same way in our brains. Like, it's not something I brought on myself. And in some instances, when you're talking about dabbling in this kind of a thread with lust and sexual urges and all the paraphernalia that can be surrounding this, there's an intention to seeking it out. But what it elicits in your body is a deep kind of thing. And when you're first exposed to it, I remember I remember vividly the way I felt the first pornographic images I saw as a little fourth grader. I can still remember how that felt in my body. And that's a deep That's because that's deep in my brain. That emotion is not the picture. I have no idea what it was I saw.
Sure.
Trying to put it together. Like, I don't even remember what it was.
So there can actually be a little bit of like revisionist history.
Absolutely.
When those things
We don't
pop
have
into your
all the
head.
data
Yeah.
associated. We just have the feeling of in the situation of it. And so the goal then becomes, how do I rewire that sum to make that feeling associated with a current experience as much as I can, or an actual experience. If we're doing trauma work, it's the same kind of thing. I got to lean in towards that trauma to allow the brain to pull it back to a level it can actually start to categorize and put in order. Gotcha. And then that's how it gets to rest a little better. Doesn't go away, but the emotion dampens from it. And what's interesting when we're talking about our sexual pasts, a lot of the things that we have that happened or we sought out when we were younger elicited these real heightened feelings, sexually speaking, because of the novelty, the unknown, the naivete, everything, right? The titillation of it, whatever it might be. And sadly, what we will try to do is, unbeknownst to our conscious brain, it seems like, I spend a lot of time trying to recreate that in real time when I can't sometimes, because I got too much other things going on in my brain that kind of know that was an anomaly. That wasn't completely real in the moment, like with a person or with an event or where I currently am. And so I try to bring the past to recreate in the present, which that's what we hear all the time. How do we get back to what we felt when we were dating? It's the same mechanism at play. It's the brain operating on parts of it that it's just emotion in there. It's not the whole story of what's currently happening. And so when these are accessible not accessible, when they happen and she's wondering or he's wondering, there's nothing, usually it's not intent. They just happen. So then the question becomes, what do you do with them? Where do you steer them?
Sure. Well, and that's for him, right?
And her.
I'm hearing two things here. I'm hearing a lot of fear from her on how does he do that? Just scared about what might still be lingering in there.
Well,
feeling it like it's the other woman still.
Yeah, and she uses that phrase of it's all those images are in there looking to devour him. Like they're intentionally coming after him to destroy him. And if allowed, it could happen. But that's where our own take every thought captive. If you pull scripture, we've interpreted that as, how do I steer every thought? Because I don't make them not happen. They just will. But I have the ability sooner, hopefully rather than later, but anywhere on this continuum is still work and benefit of, where do I steer it?
Yeah.
How do I direct it elsewhere? How do I funnel it? How do I channel it? How do I pray over it? How do I, it's just, that's taking it captive. And so it's realizing, like the bird analogy she talks about is pretty good in the sense of, yeah, that's the things they just fly over our head all day long.
Yeah.
But sometimes we find ourselves feeding them because I like that feeling. I'm going to keep feeding that thing because I want it to stay around. I like how it makes me feel, and I like what it's eliciting in my body and all. And so if he's already doing that, that's good work of realizing I'm just not encouraging it anymore, and I'm not lingering with it like I used to, but it is still there.
Yeah, it's a constant battle.
It can be.
It can be, but I think if you're funneling it, if you're recognizing where you are, calling it out, naming it, praying over it, those kinds of things are the long-term fight against it.
Right, because like what he's doing when those images surface, that's where the relational work lives.
Yeah.
That's where his journey becomes tangible.
Yeah. So it is interesting when you're on that point the wording, I believe, was he actually won the battle early against porn in the marriage, right?
With the acting out,
yeah.
Which I think would be the way I interpret that is the actual seeking it out and consuming.
Well, how do you explain that someone who thinks that beating porn is just the finish line, right?
Yep.
And so in the conversation, well, if you just stop looking, then you beat porn, but that's not really the whole picture.
Yeah. And I keep coming across this thread and some of the different conversations we've been having in the men's ministry I'm a part of, and then talking in some of these groups that I lead, that when we're talking about these kinds of battles, it really is usually bathed in shame, and shame thrives in secrecy. And so when you bring someone something like his experience has been and they minimize it, it's either too much for them to handle because it makes them feel insecure.
Yeah.
It's too close to home. They're in the throes of something too.
Yeah.
Or it's just they're scared of it, that they're scared of that part of life, right? And so because it's like, that's why oftentimes all those answers he's been receiving is just people projecting their own fears, not actually hearing his.
Yeah.
Which we do this in a lot of ways. I get something that, a tragedy or a pain point or something that's going on in somebody's life, and it freaks me out. And I give a platitude or a statement and I'm basically brushing them off.
Are they just brushing him off, or they just don't know? Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that that's all they have to go off of is their own life experience. Mm-hmm. And maybe they just don't have wisdom in that.
I'm going to guess that one could be, I feel inadequate to know even what to do with this. But I'm also going to guess that a lot of times the reason why churches don't handle this well, in my experience, has been, is it's such a big issue with some of the people even leading the churches.
Sure.
And so how can they speak to something that they're struggling with and they're dealing with in secret as well? And so it becomes this problem of everybody's avoiding what is something that's real, that could be beneficial and healed through Jesus's love and through the grace that we have and through real relationship with each other.
Yeah.
And so it really, I mean, it's sad to realize he sought it out and was further met with isolation.
Yeah.
And because we interpret those things as, I guess they got their act together. Well, okay. Or, now what am I supposed to do?
Or they don't care, or I'm alone. I think that might be the worst, when you just feel more isolated because there's not someone walking alongside
From the way
you.
she's framing this and talking about their journey, when he disclosed to her that was actually, as excruciating as that probably was for the both of them. Because a lot of times we only hear one side of this, in the sense of, I can't even, how do you, because it's like she's taken off guard possibly.
Sure.
I have no idea. So she's trying to play catch up with a journey that's been going on for a while. But it's being on his side of the equation. It's excruciating for him too. I'm like totally unrobing all of me.
Yeah, talk
here.
About intimacy. That's just
right.
Intimacy.
That was
right
the
there.
first honest witness he had, was her, which is both beautiful and excruciating.
Yeah.
Right. And it's subsequently an indictment of the community they were in. And nobody else was there alongside in that kind of a depth, is what it sounds like. And that's sad, because we thrive best in real community with people, same gendered with this kind of content, obviously.
Yes. Same gender.
But realizing there is power in that, the more we can really embrace and do the work like he was trying to do, even though it was met with pain and distance.
Sure. Well, and from her perspective, what's the difference between a wife who is now aware of this reality and carrying it well versus one who's just sitting there braced for what's going to drop next?
Okay.
I guess living in the fear versus carrying it well.
So this is, we'll answer this and then we'll transition into the extended content with the last little part. Okay. Because I think this is the crux of what she's really asking. And let's make sure we get this landed here. So she's basically, what do I do with this knowledge? How does this impact me? What am I supposed to do with all that was just laid in my lap? Because she hinted at it exposed some things in her journey.
And I think you nailed it too, in that he's farther along in the journey because he's known about it and dealt with it for a while. And then she's still playing catch up. Even if now at this point when she's emailing us, she's already known about it for a couple of years. She's still behind him in the journey. Can't create a bunch of fear.
Right. So so you immediately feel like you're on your back foot.
Yes.
Like you're on your heels. I'm reeling. What am I supposed to do with this? Because typically speaking, tell me if I'm off with our journey as well. A disclosure like this, the depth of what's been going on and what the journey has been, oftentimes bleeds straight into a insecurity or an uncertainty or a history in the spouse.
Oh, that's what it did for me. But
well, I'm doing it
to our point about the men speaking from only what they knew. I don't want to just do what I know.
Fair, but I'm connecting the dots because it sounds like if she's hinting at, I had some things that my history has been tapped into from this journey in the current now as well. And so the real question for wives in this situation is, how do I stand? How do I stay in the full reality of what my husband carries, of what's going on with them, without shrinking from it or being destroyed by it? Because it's his. It impacts you, but it's his. All too often, we have a mechanism in our bodies of, how do I fix this? What do I do? And so that's where we go back in our archives to the episode. If you Google, on the search bar at the bottom of our website, the worst advice for porn ever given was a couple that we can just fix this. And that's the counsel they were given, where she would just play the role of satisfying anything he needed. And like, really? No, it's not even close to helpful. But it's her realizing that, how does she respond to what he is doing and the way this is being portrayed demonstrates to me he loves her. He's in this with her. He is a husband to her. He is a lover to her. And he's bringing the ugly out of every human being. It just looks different, but we all have it.
Well, he's disclosing that,
which is intimate, right? Which is intimate. And so now when that kind of move happens, we have a tendency to want to shrink, push it away, explain, fix, while at the same time, I need to be doing some healing. I need to do some settling of, what do I do with this new reality? What's really going on here? Because now she could become hyper focused on what's going on in his brain.
That would be my biggest thing, would be, don't spend so much time trying to decipher what is going on between those ears of his, because then you've got that, release speculation, get rid of the speculation, because your mind just takes you down all these paths that so many times are your enemy. Your mind can be your own worst enemy. So it's focusing on you. How are you handling what you might be afraid of? How are you handling your own
That's the point.
mind within your sexual relationship, within your marriage?
And that's the key point right there, Pam, is now what's her part in her own life and her own sex life within the marriage? Mm-hmm. How is she handling her in light of this? Because oftentimes what we try to do is manage everything around us.
And that's his responsibility to take care of his own scene.
So she could, in essence, it's getting to a point where you can look him square in the eye as a wife and say, okay, I hear what it is you carry. I can't take it away. I can't manage it from the outside here. But what I want to know is, what are you doing with it? Right? How are you steering it?
Yeah, you can have a dialogue with him, but it's not your job to manage it for him. You can be his advocate and walk alongside.
Right, because that's not shrinking from it. That's living in the full reality of a full-grown person, good and bad, and realizing my job is not to solve all of this for them. My job is to handle myself in it, be an ally as I can with them, collaborate as I can and am able with them. Yeah. And then if I need the time because I'm on my back foot, claim it. Because a lot of times, and this is to the other side of the equation, husbands, just to keep it in the thread of this email, husbands, when they disclose something, wonder, how much time does she need? Not realizing I had a huge head start in dealing with this.
That's a good point. I bet you get that a lot in your office.
I do. How long? Seriously.
How long is she going to hold on to this?
It's been 5 months. Like, come on.
Wait, you were dealing with this for a decade
or longer,
or 2 decades,
right?
And she just, now you've thrown it out at her,
right?
Yeah, it takes time.
And so, final note before we switch to the extended content is it's worth noting for the woman that wrote this in, she's already starting to do this. She's already closer to this posture than she realizes. The way she's phrased this, pretty clear-eyed, pretty open, pretty honest. She wasn't catastrophizing it. She's actually seeking, and she's trying to help others.
Yeah.
With the journey.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you go the strict AA mentality of if I struggle with something, step 12, if you follow through with the AA process, step 12 is I walk alongside someone else to be a servant to them in their struggle. That's how we actually heal. I think God created us that when I get real about things, I find out who my allies really are, which sometimes is excruciating to go through to realize I don't have the ones I thought I had. But then when I find them and we become a brotherhood in this instance or a sisterhood, depending on the gender here, and then you serve one another, that's how we start to heal better and faster, because then it's not just about me. It's about us. And that's the same kind of concept that happens to marriages that can help. What do we do? How is my journey? I'll just own it for me. How is my journey from my past impacted you? And what do I do in light of that impact? How do I handle that? Because it's not that you're not the cause, but you are impacted by it. So what do I need to do? Who do I want to be in light of that?
Yeah.
That's the energy then to really face whatever the turmoil, the journey, the history we've had. When I can keep it that frame, man, it starts to put it more squarely on my own shoulders. And then how do I direct it and be a good ally and lover and spouse?